welcome to another episode of Coder Conversations. This is Kevin. We have Sean, and we also have special guest Raja Krishna. Welcome, Raja.
Thank you. I wanted to be on one of these podcasts for a long time, honestly.
Oh yeah, is this your first time?
Yes, this is my first time.
Yeah, glad to have you on, man. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, what kind of technologies have you been using? How did you get into technology?
Okay. I've been using React since 2 or 3 years right now. I've used
Hmm.
React, and at my new company, like my current company, I've used TypeScript, used Python, like in the back end a little bit.
Hmm.
In my personal projects, I try to use Python, like whenever I'm like web scraping or something. But it's mostly front end, like CSS, JavaScript, React.js, Next.js, like one of the frameworks, I guess.
Got it. How did you learn programming? Did you go to school or did you teach yourself?
Okay, that's kind of okay. So in my bachelor's, I was doing electronics and communication. That's what it's electronics. So
Hmm.
we had few of the programming classes. We had C. I think that was in my first year. We had like C language, and we had Java in my fourth year, probably. And I mean, I didn't learn much in there. It was just like a semester, so I didn't learn much. But I tried to learn it myself. Like I learned HTML and JavaScript a little bit, but when I came to do my masters, that's when I actually started learning. Like in the first semester of my masters, they were like, "Here you go, build a." I think he was trying to build a Dropbox API, build a Google Maps API, use JavaScript to do this, this, this. Then I had to like start learning all this. React, I learned it on my own.
Got it. So did you have like imposter syndrome, like when first coming into contact with these new technologies?
Yes, I thought I wasn't good. I thought like, hey, like everybody else is doing it. Like when I first started JavaScript, like everybody else was like writing quick, quick, quick. I was like, it was just plain JavaScript. It wasn't even one of the frameworks or PHP or whatever. So it kind of hit me hard, at least in my first semester, since hey, I'm doing masters in computer science. I have to know at least one of the languages in here. So I that's when I think when I touched Python, that's when it got kind of easier. I'm like, okay, this is what coding is like. It's kind of getting easier for me. And when I started looking at YouTube videos, and I'm like, okay, these people, senior developers, also make the same mistakes that I do.
Yeah.
Even they can't center a dev, just like me. So it kind of got easier, but it's still kind of there with me. It's always
Mm.
there. It's always hanging out behind me.
So, so like, how do you keep it under control? How do you avoid like?
I don't think I can fully ever control it, but
Mm.
I can get better at I can bet better at my programming. Like most of the times it's I get it when I find an error in my code. Like I have an
Mm.
error in my code and I can't fix it. And I try and try, I can't fix it. But I reach out to another developer and he just fixes it just like this. In like 2 seconds, it's like, oh, this is this. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should have thought of that one. Like, why didn't I think of that one? It was very easy for it, you know? I'm trying to get better at like debugging these errors for me at least.
Do you have any tips, Sean, on how to help them improve debugging?
Honestly, my secret is to ask someone for help, particularly someone online, because invariably by the time they respond, I've already like there's just something about me asking
Mm.
that uh, causes me to realize what the answer is. And I
That
say that funny, but it's so true.
that happens. Like, and also I think like most developers have this that they don't reach out to people. Like
Hmm.
they're like, oh, if I reach out to this person, like he's gonna think that I don't know nothing. I don't like I didn't even know this small thing, but you should probably reach out to other people. Like I reach out to my senior developer probably every day because the more I learn from him, the less I have to reach out to him.
There's no
Yeah.
shame in that either. Like
Yes.
we all learn from somebody, and I used to tell my junior developers, not here as a CTO, but at other companies, that find the smartest person in the room and learn from them. You do what they do, you'll get the same results. And I mean, that's pretty much like how you get better. One of the ways.
I've seen I forgot the name of the YouTube. So so that person, I think he works at Twitch, is senior developer at Twitch or staff engineer at Twitch or something. I forgot his name on YouTube. But he was like telling in a YouTube video that he reaches out to junior developers and asks them to ask at least 15 stupid questions to him in the 1 week or 2 weeks. Ask 15 stupid questions. Like, you're allowed to do this. And I'm like, okay, that's how people grow. Like, that's how all these junior developers grow, by asking these questions.
Exactly.
It's neat that you can, because I started in the 80s and there was no internet at all. And there was no YouTube, there was no Twitch, there was no coding conversations. It was just, you could buy a book or rent a book at a library, and maybe there was a periodical. But your ability to learn how to code was so limited, and it was hard to get answers. So I have a tinkerer's heart, just because from when I started, I had to tinker. I don't see as much of that these days. A lot of people tend to get like frustrated, like, like I can't think of something, maybe I'm not good enough, or I'll just Google it, or they give up too easily. But it's those tinkerers that invent things and do really, really interesting stuff that we all like to use and things like that. But now we're in the day of YouTube, internet, mentors, and all that stuff. I mean, milk it.
Mm-hmm.
You learn better through help than you do through struggle.
So Roger, like, how do you keep on top of your skills? Like, what courses or what platforms do you use to stay on top of your learning?
Honestly, like, I stay top of it just by my code base that I have right now. Because our code base, like, I came from a code base. I mean, I came from different repos. Like, we had different repos. Like, in my previous job, we had different repos. But in my current job, like, since it's a startup, I have to do a lot of other things. Like, I may tell you that I'm a front end engineer, but I had to work on Stripe. I had to work on, like, the signature HelloSign. I had to work on Twilio. Like, there are a lot of other things that they're literally like growing me. Instead of me actually reaching out and, like, looking at all these videos, I'm actually learning at the company, like, on production level, I guess, even though it's not in prod. But
Yeah, that is true about startups. You have to wear a lot of hats. Isn't that the same for you, Sean?
Yeah, for sure. There's no one hat person anywhere until you have about 30 people, everybody's doing everything.
So how do y'all manage like all of the complexity? I know it can get overwhelming having to wear all these different hats. How do you avoid getting overwhelmed?
You don't?
Just deal with it, huh?
A lot of it is, I don't know about how Raja's approach. Is it Raja? Raja. I don't know. Like, everybody, it's a personal thing. We all have a different approach. The way I do it is, I know if I get interrupted in the middle of something, that it'll just never get done because it takes me so long to task switch back in. So what I do is I focus on one thing, but I break it into steps, like step 1, step 2, step 3. Like, these 3 different iterations is the completion of it. But if I get step 1 out, then I can switch to something else and then come back and do step 2. And that's actually the main way that I deal with it.
How about you, Roger? How do you kind of manage that?
so we talked about this a lot in my company while we were starting out. Like, this was like a few months back. Like, we had a lot of things happening at the same time. Like, developers were doing this, documentation, this, like, researching this topic, that topic. I think it all came down to, for me at least, it all came down to talking to the managers about this, or somebody at the top, that, hey, I can't be switching takes me hours. Like, I go from like writing React to I go from researching Stripe. It's like it takes me 1 hour to actually like disconnect myself from this, go to that, then again disconnect myself from that and come back to this. And that's a waste of company's time.
Yeah.
So it's like if I'm working on something, I'm working on that thing. Like I don't try to move. Obviously, like sometimes I do have to move. I make it
Mhm.
easier on myself to not go to a different like story and stay on this specific story that I have right now.
Okay, so basically focusing and cutting out the distraction that helps both of y'all really manage all of the complexity.
Yes.
Okay. So like, what do you do outside of work, man? How do you decompress?
I try to work out. That's one
Mhm.
of the things. And it rained, I think, yesterday in Texas.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
so happy I went out, I walked a little bit in the rain, you know. It was 100-degree temperatures.
yeah.
I don't know if this week is the same too, but it's going 100 degrees. I'm trying not to go out and get sunburned, but for now I'll be working out, and sometimes like I do like study some of the new coding things online. Like as a I think as a software developer, outside of your work life, you still try to code. You still try to learn new things because you'll get off your. I think you'll get out of your job pretty quick if you don't try to learn new things because there
Yeah,
is always a new JavaScript framework that's coming out every day.
exactly. What about you, Sean? What have you been doing outside of work to kind of stay refreshed?
Nothing. It's, it, the last 2 or 3 weeks, it has just been work. Some priorities have to get dealt with, and then I can get back into life again. But normally, what I would be doing is hiking, walking. There's some
Mm.
lakes around here. Um, I live near mountains and hills, so I could do some hiking. But that's about it.
What is the average like temperature out there? 'Cause I know in here in Texas, like 100 degrees every day.
I've been walking a lot about an hour ago each day. Man, it's hot. But let me check
Mm.
and see what it feels like 100, right? But it's not. It's 76, but it feels like
76.
100.
Wow. Yeah, I wish it was that here, man.
But I only go out for like 45 minutes, but I come back and I'm just like, it's like I jumped into a swimming pool and got out. I'm just drenched. And it's like, man, is it in the hundreds? And then I look and it's like, nope, 75.
Oh wow. Is
That's
it real
why
cool?
it's 69 degrees and you see Californians in 3 layers of clothing.
Hmm. Yeah, I had no idea like so much of California was so cool during the summer, like in the 70s and 60s.
Yeah.
How long have you been in Texas, Raja?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you like it?
Except the temperature, everything else is good. Like
Yeah.
the weather changes very rapidly. Like
Oh yeah.
I don't know why it's not changing this summer. This summer is super hot, but previously, like it used to be hot in the morning and bam, 0 degrees in the night.
Yeah. Well, were you here during like tornado season?
Yes. God, and don't talk about that one. Like we had lights, at least for us, like it was good. Thank God, like our apartment complex, there were lights out for I think 12 hours or something,
Mm.
probably less than that. But everything else was good. Like we had to throw out all the frozen food, like, but it was pretty good in the whole sense. We couldn't find food, so we had to go out on the snow. All the McDonald's, everything was full. I think that was last year. I think this year was pretty good compared to last year.
Mm. Is this your second company or your first company that
This
you've
is
been
my
working with?
second company.
Okay. How does this company contrast to the previous one? You like it better?
Yes. I mean, I
Mm.
always wanted to join a startup, at
Oh.
least in my first few years of my development, like 5 to 10 years of my development. I won't, because I've heard from other people, like I've heard from some of my cousins and everybody, like who are at like big positions right now. The knowledge that you gain from here is a lot more than anything that you can gain from any big company.
Mm.
Even though they say that, hey, go to a big company, you can learn, but in a big company, you only work on a single thing. Here, I'm not just working on, like, I would never would have thought that I worked on Storybook in my life. Storybook was something that came out of nowhere, and I had to learn it. And now I appreciate having a design system at the company that, hey, we have this, so these are the users of Storybook at a company.
You find that same experience, Sean? Startups have been teaching you like way more than big companies.
Yeah, so I have a new person that started about 4 weeks ago, and he just graduated from a coding boot camp, and this is his first job since then. And the first thing I did is I said, we're rewriting our app from scratch, and you're laying down the first line of code. And he started with that. And of course, I work with him and stuff like that, but he does a lot of it. And he just sent me a Slack message yesterday and thanking me about how he's just learning so much because he had to encounter JWT tokens, OAuth stuff, permissions, like just so many things to list. And it's only been like 3 weeks, and he's just in the thick of it. And so I've had that same kind of feedback from other people that I've hired. But as
Hmm.
for me, it feels like just another day in the office. So I'm not the best barometer. But when I listen to how they talk about it, like they don't leave my company because they don't want to go somewhere and just be doing one thing.
Right.
It's actually nice. Like, I think I've grown a lot more in the past 8 months than, like, in
Mm-hmm.
the past year at the previous company. There's a lot more to learn, and things move quick. Like,
Hmm.
we can't slack here. Like, we can't be like, oh, we are maintaining this code. No, we are not maintaining this code. We are actively developing it and getting it to production quick.
Yeah.
Is the benefits at the company good? Like they give you a lot of days off, or is it like more like constant work?
Okay. I think, I don't know, they changed the naming of it. I forgot the name, but it is unlimited PTO.
Mm.
But I think it's called flexible PTO. It's not unlimited. Obviously, you can't take months off. But I say the culture at the company is pretty great. I
Mm.
love the culture at the company. Everybody is pretty open. It's bottom top. Like, if you want to slack the CEO, you can slack the CEO. He's
Oh
going
wow.
to, he or she, both of them are going to reply to you.
Is it like that at your company, Sean? Like pretty flat structure.
Yeah. There's the CEO, the CSO, and then me, and then everyone else under me. And then,
Hmm.
and then like, even though I'm their boss, like they also, it's kind of like we three co-share the space. Sometimes they need something and then they just go and get it. Like it is pretty flat. There's literally one layer of management and then one more layer of everybody else.
Mm. Yeah, you got to love those kind of companies where you can actually reach out to the decision makers.
Yeah.
It's
I've been working at mostly like big corporations. My first company was a startup, but everything else has been like like Citigroup, AT&T, and yeah, you a lot of times you can't really go up too far up the chain. You just got to kind of wait for them to give you the decision. So you
That's
know,
the thing with big companies. Like, you have to talk to your manager. The manager goes and talks to senior manager. The senior
mhm,
manager has another manager on top of it.
yeah,
Yeah, and you're
You,
gonna hope you don't have a manager that has a an insecurity that if you talk to someone above them, then they think you're going around
mhm.
them.
Oh
yes,
yeah.
that I think my manager is pretty good. I mean, my manager is my CTO basically,
Mm.
so he's pretty great. Like, he's very open. Like, that's what, at least the tech team. I don't know about the other teams. I haven't talked to them much, but the tech team is pretty open, and the approaches are mostly bottom to top. Like, we are the ones who make the decisions, and he will finalize the decision. But
Hmm.
we can, like, give our options. We can talk to him. We can see, what our opinions are, and that's what I like about it. It's not like, hey, work with React, hey, work with Storybook, and don't talk to me, something like that.
So it kind of integrates you into the decision making.
Yes, I've
No.
made some decisions, like my team and us, like we have made some decisions that actually like we've implemented them too.
Mm.
And it's like when the manager, my manager is a technical manager, so
Hmm.
like he has his, I think he has, I forgot the name of the Google certification. What is the top one, the top Google certification?
Yeah, I'm not sure
uh,
about
I think it's called Google Fellowship or something, and only 5% of the people have that
that.
certification,
Oh wow.
and my manager has that certification.
Mm. So he's really technically sound.
Is Yes, that's good, so we can talk technical to him. We can
Okay.
be like, hey, like this is the problem, this is what's going on, and he'll help us out. He has his GCP, he has GCP knowledge, like Google Cloud, the whole
Mm.
knowledge of GCP and the other technical stuff too. Easier to talk to him, easier to make, it's easier for him to make decisions on them too, on our opinions. And
So yeah, you said he was a really good manager. Like what are the traits of a good manager to you versus a bad manager?
okay, for me, a good manager should be open to the people below, opinions of below, anybody below him.
Hmm.
Like if somebody is saying, hey, this is not right, I want to go this way, he should be at least be open to like, okay, we'll try it. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We have sprints and all, like it's not less sprint, like I think it's like a hackathon or something,
Hmm.
where we just sit down for 1 week, and just we had two products going on. We are checking out a policy admin system, and in 1 week there were three developers. We sat down, we did like a small hackathon kind of thing where we completed it, and we gave the results to the manager. He's like, here you go.
Mm.
And we were like, okay, I like this and I like this and I like this. I don't like this, I don't like this. Depending upon that, he's going to make the final decision.
Right.
It-
So Sean, you find do you find you taking that kind of approach when dealing with your team?
Yeah, so as a leader, like I have to listen. Otherwise, I'm a
Mhm.
otherwise I'm some kind of a dictator or that kind of thing. But at the same time, I have to make decisions, and it's going to go in conflict with what some of the team wants. So managing how to do that, is I generally tend to point them in the right direction, but let them decide how it's going to get there.
Mm. So
And
yeah.
as my team has grown and learned the kinds of things that make me happy or not happy, I don't. I'm not even remotely as involved with them anymore as I was. They are actually a lot more independent, and they know how to. They've grown a lot, and so, you have to trust but guide. And I think the hallmarks for me, I still have bosses and managers, even though I'm a CTO, right? I think the
Mhm.
hallmarks of a good manager is, in general, for me, it's all about trust. Trust means empathy. It means that they listen. It means there's communication. It doesn't mean you get what you want, but it means you're treated with respect. Versus a lot of managers I've had in the past where they just want what they want, and like you can't reason with them. That's not a good manager.
Right.
Now, good management means two different things. The company will view a good manager as one who delivers fast and delivers, just keeps delivering, no matter what their personality is, and no matter what the turnover is. That is how the investors look at a good manager. But
Mhm.
as a employee, you don't look at a good manager as the one that's burning you out and running you into the ground, right? You
Yeah.
look at a good manager as one that communicates and listens well.
and also there is micromanaging. Like I don't like managers who try to micromanage what I'm doing every day. Like don't like sit behind me and like tell me, okay, do this, or you're doing this wrong, this wrong, this wrong.
Mhm.
It kind of put pressure on you, and the more pressure you have, the less you'll go. Your productivity will drop a lot.
So
And
like
that's
whenever a manager does something that you don't particularly care for, how do you push back? What are your strategies for going against the grain, so to say?
oh, for me at least, like my company is pretty open. Like if I
Hmm.
don't like something, I'm just gonna say it out loud. Like if it's in a stand up or a backlog refinement or something, If I don't like, let's just say they're using some other module that I don't want to use. Mostly my manager won't, I mean, 90% of the time, he won't touch the code. Like he won't
Mm.
tell us what to do with our own code. Maybe it's dealing, the most thing that he deals with is what the actual company has to deal with. Like, let's just say like I'm working with Stripe. So he has the final decision on Stripe. I don't, because it's not the coding aspect, it's a business aspect when it comes to Stripe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if I disagree with him, I'm just gonna tell it. I'm just gonna let him know that, hey, I disagree with this, and this, but I'm not somebody that I'm not gonna force my manager to do something, because he has to think in his own business perspective. He has to talk to his superiors, like he has a CEO above him. So I'm just gonna give my opinion. I'm gonna leave it up to him. It's like, oh, here's this, but the final decision is yours. And whatever he chooses, I'm happy with it because I like my manager. Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I know that he's going to take a good decision, so I'm going to leave the final decision to him. And that, I think that matters a lot, because the manager trusting me, I have to trust my manager with the decision too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely a two-way street. What about you, Sean? Like, how do you push back against like the CEO? And on the flip side of the coin, when somebody pushes back against you, how do you react to that?
Yeah, I was thinking about something Raja was just saying is, from a manager's perspective, sometimes I override my team simply because I'm the one who's accountable for any decision or anything that happens or doesn't happen. And I have to be able to own it. So there has been a couple times where my team just pleaded with me and please let us do it this way. But I couldn't get it into my head and the deadline and everything. So I had to take it a different direction than they wanted just so I can speak to it before the investors and own the accountability side. But when I do that, I always go back another cycle and I let them refactor and rewrite and do it. It's for me, that's always a temporary decision, but it's not that way for everybody. And it's difficult because I go to sleep at night going, man, I just told them that the thing that's most important to them isn't important to me. But in reality, just getting past that milestone, was important to all of us, even though they don't see the inner workings. So sometimes that happens. To answer your question, Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
um, as a CTO, it's easy to push back on the team too hard, and no one will speak up too loudly because they're afraid of getting fired. So I've actually had to learn how to read emotions and sense the mood of the day and kind of, did I cause this mood or what's causing it and that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do listen, and I think that's the most important. The team will tell you what they want, but you're going to have 15 different people telling you 15 different things, and only one or two or three or four of them can actually go forward.
Mm-hmm.
um, when But I do listen when it's somebody that's above me, like my boss. um, I've worked for the micromanager types before, and all you can do with them is choose your battles unless you very quickly want them to feel like you're not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have somebody who likes having control and you don't feel like they trust you, you just have to choose your battles and show them that you can be trusted and not like create friction and have that grind. And you're going to be miserable.
No.
But I've managed to turn a few of those people around. At the end, they just want to know that you're not going to, let them down in some way. When it's the team, then uh, I tend to explain why I'm making a decision that I am. I won't just say no and then walk away. I will try as hard as I can to get a buy-in or an understanding at least. Um, being at a high level of management, it's really difficult because you take it from both ends. You take it from the people below
Mhm.
you, and you get it from the people above you.
Yeah, a lot of the managers that I've come across, they seem like really stressed out. So, like, what are some of the things that like the coders below you, they don't really realize that you deal with? Like maybe like you have to get chewed out by the boss, or you know you have to meet a tight deadline, and it's all on you, and they don't really realize that.
I'm kind of going through that right now, where a year ago, see, we invented our product from scratch just about 18 months ago, and when you start with nothing, you're going to have a lot of inefficiencies everywhere. Your deployment is going to be wrong and slow. Your automations don't exist. Your back end is less efficient. You just have to evolve it. You don't start optimal and efficient. At least we didn't. And in order to speed things up, we did a lot of work on the back end. We put in that automation. We put in that DevOps stuff. We put in the AWS. Like we literally took a 5-week delivery process and brought it down to like 2 days. But we put no effort into the front end. So the front end still takes a long time because it was not done very correctly either originally. And features is what sells to the customers. And if they're not moving fast enough, they wonder where all their money and time is going, the CEOs, the bosses. So I'm kind of in that boat right now where it's like we did all this work to get everything down to days, but the front end still takes a week or two when it should just take a day or two. And it's hard to explain because what they can't see, they don't believe.
Right.
It's hard for me, even for my backend team. Like they work a lot. Like they work more. I think they work more than us. Like putting all those APIs together and the policy admin system they have to work with. But since you can't see it, or you're like, oh, are they really working? Like, do they really?
Yeah.
Mm.
I
So,
read
yeah.
an article just a few days ago, a LinkedIn post rather, and it literally was speaking to me. And I mean, they didn't write it to me, but it basically said so I'm a back-end scalability architect by trade, and then I became a CTO, but I wasn't working as a front-end developer. And it literally said that people who have a strong background in the back end, when they become directors or CTOs, they're going to neglect the front end. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't focus on it because that wasn't a strength that I had. I know now for the future that everything needs equal attention.
So, like, when you say neglecting the front end, can you speak on that? Like, the site didn't look that good, or the functionality wasn't as robust, or?
So when you build a React or any kind of a modern front end with components, you generally design it a certain way. You break it into components, you find the reusable parts, you think about it. We didn't. Every screen in our system was written as if there were no other screens in existence. So when we're a data analytics company, and some of the data shows up like all across the whole thing. So when we hit one of those features where we're going to go change 20 screens, we literally have to solve that problem for the first time 20 times. That's why we're rewriting it in Svelte, by the way, is to add the architecture. Now, me not being a React developer, I didn't know that. I just let my front-end developers do what they saw fit until we started getting features and we couldn't get them into the system because it would take a month. So that's what I mean by put attention to it.
Got it.
We have a mono repo at our company. The components are like that's what I like about it because all the components are connected together. Like if it's like the input has text entry in it. Text entry has the actual JS element in it. So all the colors are coming from the top down. Like the whole system design is like built. So if I change one color, it changes for every button in the whole website itself. Like one of our lead developers actually had the code for all that, and I love this system. Like it is so easy that I don't have to like go through multiple things. So if I want to change a color, I don't have to go through every page and change the color everywhere. I just have to change it at one place and it changes by itself.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a good design system. So, like, what are some of the other things that y'all do to keep the front end maintainable and easy to change?
Okay. So we have a mono repo going on with React and React Native both in the same repo. And we are using, I think, GraphQL and Apollo server to connect to the backend. The state management is done by the Apollo server, so we don't have to use any Redux or any other state management systems. Everything is stored in Apollo server. Everything goes to Apollo server. From there, like it can go anywhere it wants to. For us front-end developers, we just need to send it to the server part of it, the GraphQL server, and that gets taken care of from there. And we have the system design. It's not proper yet, at least in Storybook. Like I've written Storybook my stories myself, and I forgot how the component looks like. And I had to open Storybook to check how the component works. Like what props does this component have? And I think Storybook is one of every company should have their own Storybook with their
Mm-hmm.
design system inside it. At least like we have colors, we have typography, and the color says every color that like these are the text colors. Okay, these are the
Mm-hmm.
button colors. These are these colors. Like you need to have everything in a single place that let's just say a new developer joins your company, he opens Storybook, that's it, that's all he needs to do. Oh, he needs a button, go to Storybook, change.
Mm-hmm.
And in Storybook you have the option to like add the props and like change the props over there. You just copy paste the code and put it over there.
So for those that don't really know what Storybook is, can you explain to them?
Okay, Storybook is a system design. I think it's a component design system
Mm-hmm.
for front end developers. They may say it's system design, but it's technically like all the React components that you have. Let's just say you have a button, you have this, you have that. Like
Mm-hmm.
you pull all of that into Storybook, and I can we share something over here?
Sure. There should be
I
a
it's
screen share
easier
button.
to show for me than.
Let me see.
Let me see if I can actually like show this. Okay, maybe you guys can go to the Storybook. Wait,
Okay. Um, yeah, if
there
you
are.
could
Okay,
see. Okay.
let me. Okay, if you go to storybookjs.org
Okay, yeah, let me
and
pull that up. Storybookjs.org.
yes, I think it's storybook.js.org. Yeah.
Yes. Let's see. Okay, yeah, here we go. Let me showcase. Let me share my screen.
Yes, and you can see like you can click on one of the designs, like any of the designs by those companies. I would, yeah, anything is fine. Like you can click on the Storybook over there, like at the
Okay.
top. Yes. Oh,
Let's see.
I think.
Yeah, we could just. Okay.
Okay, so now this, like as a front end developer, like this is so good. Like this makes it easier for me.
Mm-hmm.
This makes it easier for me. Like, okay, I go to Storybook, I read all this, I know, like, because most of the times, if there are like two developers working on something, some person may use 4 pixels of margin and the other person may use 3 pixels of margin, but the company
Mm-hmm.
actually requires you to use 4 pixels or eight, like multiples of four. And if it's all documented over here, and each component is documented too. If you click on show code, I don't know if you can actually see the code in this.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yes. So you just copy paste this code into your editor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just copy and paste it. Yeah.
Yes, and okay, let me see if I can give this link to you guys. Oh,
And I believe with Storybook, you can kind of do like live manipulation, right? You can change the props and see how it affects the component.
yes. If you go back to showcase, like Storybook showcase.
Let me see. Oh, is that let me see. Okay.
And go back to the and Go
Okay.
back, go down, click on view all projects, view all
This right
storybook.
here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you go down, you can see Adobe. I think it's on the right side somewhere. If you keep going down, yes. Yes,
Adobe.
it's right
Right.
there. Yeah. Now, this storybook, if you can click on storybook, you'll have the options over there.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
now this has the props. Now, this is easy. Like you change the prop over here at the bottom. There are the controls. Like you can change from false to true if you can open
Hmm.
or not. And it
Right.
just makes for new developers at least easier to go through all this. I can change the prop, or I can see everything. I can see like, okay, this is what the button has. But
Hmm.
in my previous company, we didn't have this.
Oh
I
wow.
think we used Material UI instead of using our own button. So I had to go to
Mhm.
Material UI docs. I had to go through all of the props that are there. But here I can actually like edit the props myself. I can check how the UI looks like.
Right. So this is a good way to share with other developers the components that you've been working on and how to use it.
Yes. And also people hire in the company, like your
Hmm.
managers or your CEOs, like if they want to look at your buttons and they're like, hey, I don't like this button. This Storybook has an attachment for Figma. We use Figma, where the Figma link is right there.
Mm.
It's not here. It's an add-on, but
Okay.
there is a Figma link. There you can put it over there. The designers, I think this is very helpful for the designers too. Like
Hmm.
developers and designers, when they're working together, the designer can come back and is like, hey, Raja, this button is not good. I don't like this color. I don't like this shadow that's there. It's not the
Hmm.
same as Figma link. And he can let me know about that. And I
Hmm.
can talk a lot about Storybook. There is, you can write tests on it. You can do, if you have an input component, like a
Hmm.
text entry component, you can actually type in it and
Hmm.
you can write test for it. So I think it's called interaction test, where it
Hmm.
you just write the test and it types by itself over there, checks for any errors. You can click buttons over there.
Oh wow.
You can check if you click over there. You can on that on the left. Yes, you can check different mobile. Yes, there
Oh, okay.
you can click small, mobile, tablet. Like there is a lot happening in here.
The cool thing with Storybook is it's like an interactive design system, but
Hmm.
we're trying to create a design system with Storybook, and man, it is not easy.
Hmm. I wonder, do they have this for Angular? Let's see.
They must, because our Storybook is through Svelte, so they must have one for.
Okay, yeah, they do. Introduction to Storybook for Angular. Okay, so yeah,
They
this looks
have
like.
different thing. Storybook is just a component, like a design system. You can use different frameworks with it.
Mm. And you say they got like some a lot of different plugins.
Yes, and there is a lot of configuration. Like you can configure it however you wanted it to.
Mm.
Like you can like I think you can put your own logo at the top. You can change the color. Like I played with it a little bit. I was like, okay, let me change this to blue. Let me change this to black.
Mm.
You can put dark mode, light mode. Check both of the things.
Oh
But
wow.
it's mostly helpful if you have a startup and you're just starting out, or like not just a startup. If you're a new team and you're starting out a different software,
Mm.
it's easier to just write this quick. So if a new developer joins the team, it's easier for him to start working on it.
Right. So like when a new developer joins your team, how do you onboard them quickly? Like how do you personally reach out to them and make sure they know what they're doing?
We actually had a new developer join recently.
Hmm.
First thing, I at my company we gave them a small task. That's the first thing. You get in, you'll get a task. Day one, you'll get a task. Like
Mm.
you have to work on something. You have to know the code. Because if I take time to teach you the code, if I do all this, like that's me helping you. But if you learn by yourself, you're going to learn faster, and you'll have a lot of doubts going through all this. And
Mm.
there is a developer beside you. Like we have a lead developer. We had a new mobile developer join our company. So we had the lead mobile developer. help her out. And any questions that she has, she can either reach out to me, like if she has any web or any other questions, she can reach out to him. Everybody at the company, every developer at the company is
Mm-hmm.
open to our messages. You ask about anything. I don't care if you're going to ask me about coding. I don't care if you're asking me about the CEO or my manager. I'm going to talk about anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the culture was built. You can
Mm-hmm.
reach out to any person, and he's not going to be like, hey, I don't have time for you. Like, I can't tell you this. I can't teach you this. Everybody's pretty open to like learning. Everybody's pretty open to teaching.
Yeah, that's really big, especially for new developers. Like they're not alone. A lot of the developers, when they come to a company, they feel alone. Like if I mess up, I'll get fired. I can't reach out to anybody. So it might even make them quit.
That's what I like. Like in my previous company, I had that happening where like uh, we didn't have any introductions happening because it was a
Mm,
big team. It was like 40 people working on the product, split into two teams, and you can't actually like reach out to every person. There were no introductions. I just joined the company and I had to get working. Like slowly, I started reaching out to the developers. That like I looked at the code. I was like, who's actually like working on this? I
mm,
went to the Jira board. I'm like, okay, these people are the working. I'll reach out to them. But
mm.
here we are like, okay, I'm working on this, you're working on that. We are all pretty open. Doesn't matter if you're mobile, web, you can reach out to anybody.
How about you, Sean? How do you make new developers feel comfortable joining?
So our, to be honest, it starts with the interview process. During
Mm,
the interview, um, it's not something I can easily put into words, but I disarm people. So even the most anxious of applicants, like it's like two friends talking, and then I walk them through the code and show them what they'll be working on. I'll go into a screen share, and sometimes I'll give them the mouse and keyboard, but I let them see what they're going to be working with, and we talk about it and stuff like that. So that's one part of the onboarding process. And then the second part is when they start, all of their access, their accounts, everything is set up the day before they start, and it's ready to go when at the hour that they do. And then when they do start, the last component is we have uh, like an Ansible script or something that sets up their machine, and I'll give them a task that they could realistically complete and push into our GitHub within the same day or the next day. And with all of our automations, once it's pushed, it goes out into a deployment, not into production, but into our dev and staging environments. Um, and that's how I do it, is through that experience. And then the rest of it, as they're figuring out how to complete their deployment, I get them with every other team member, like from the UX person to understand the requirement, to our DevOps to understand the CLI commands they have to know, to our database people, like whoever it happens to be.
mm,
And our people are usually onboarded within 3 days, and then after the fourth or fifth day, they're ready to go.
mm.
And it wasn't that way. It used to take months,
Oh
but
wow.
somehow through all these automations, it made it so the only barrier is our communication, and then we just put a lot of time into figuring out how to communicate with our new hires, and
Mm.
it doesn't take anyone more than a few days anymore.
Oh wow.
Even our slowest person, which would be like an intern who has very little experience and they don't have a mental frame of reference of how they should communicate or anything, even them within 5 days they're ready to go.
Mm. So yeah, Roger, where do you see yourself in like 5 years, or where do you see your career headed?
Uh, I'll probably be a senior developer by then. I'm thinking of
Mm,
that. I'm reaching 2 years right now. I'm going to be 2 years in November.
mm,
But 3 years from now, that's 5 years, 5 years. Like, I want to be at a senior dev position.
mm-hmm.
Probably in front end, but I'm trying to like branch out a little bit, learn a little bit about the back end part of it too.
Got it. Yeah, honestly, I think you could be full. I mean, senior developer next year.
I'm I'm letting you know that I'm learning a lot of skills at a startup.
Mm,
Like I'm learning more than I can learn at a different company.
yeah.
Because no one's gonna allow, if I'm at a big company, no one's gonna allow me to work with Storybook, work with the front end web app, work with Stripe, work with this. They'll be totally different teams, like split out in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning a lot, but personally, I do have a lot more to learn before I become a senior developer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning how to do unit testing properly. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
written much unit tests, but I'm learning how to do unit testing. That's my goal right now, at least for this year or something. Learn unit testing, and we are getting Playwright to do the end-to-end testing for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to learn that. So after unit testing, after Playwright, now I have at least the full knowledge of,
Yeah.
okay, I can create a component and I can push it. And obviously we are using TypeScript too, so I'm learning that too, all at the same time. So I I'll have the confidence that if I push a component, it will work.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have any bugs. I've write unit tests for it. I've done this testing. I've done TypeScript. It's easy. So here you go. That I haven't got that confidence yet, but I think I can do it probably in the next years also.
Mm-hmm. So like, okay, Sean, if you were coaching Raja, say like you decide to be his mentor or whatever, what are some of the things you would tell him to guide his software career?
Um, we managers, we tend to, how do I put this into words? We tend to think of seniority as the more independently you can take an idea to production without now, as there's always if you can imagine, this is a chart with
Mm-hmm.
just lines going somewhere, with no X and Y label. But if you can imagine, to one level of seniority, you're taking an idea to completion on your own with some independence, and you cross a line with a higher level of seniority after that, where you take an idea to completion with motivating a team and other people doing it with you. And so, my best advice is learn the skills, but more importantly, keep it in the back of your mind that you can get a 1,000-page book on JavaScript, for example, or Python, and it'll cover every single feature as if it's an encyclopedia. And then you can go and get another book on SQL for the database. Then you can go get another one on React and another one on whatever, right? But at the end of the day, when you build something, you get out the door, you've like 5% of SQL, 15% of JavaScript, 10% of HTML, 30% of CSS, 7% of unit testing ideas, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
using only a small surface area of all these technologies. But the important thing isn't how well you know JavaScript and everything. It's how well you can get an idea into production with the least amount of personal friction and then the least amount of team friction. Depending on, once you hit senior developer, you're kind of operating at an individualistic level. And once you hit like tech lead, which is above senior developer, now you're working at a team level. And then once you hit something like architect or staff, now you're hitting like company wide. So I would say learn your skills, but more important than those skills, or at least as important with a bias towards more important, um, learn how to build your relationships with people and
Mm-hmm.
influence them. And you'll actually become a senior developer years earlier.
Mm.
And I would.
Because at some point, it's not your personal skill unless you want to be the roadblock to everything. It's more about, can you get everybody else to see the vision and let them use their skills?
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of focus you put on your individual effort will help you more when you get like staff and principal level, when you can just do anything, kind of, that kind of a thing. But really, at the lower levels, it's your more important skill to accelerate you is going to be a lot more about how well you can influence others to help you.
Mm.
And you don't have to be a leader to get people to think of you as a leader.
Mm.
You just have to know how to work out relationships with them and get them excited about something with you.
Mm.
It's about like making them trust you with what
Mhm.
you have, like a story that you have that, hey, this person can actually complete this story.
Or a vision. Just
Oh,
like, hey,
okay.
hey, man, this is what I want to do. You want to help me? I hear you're good at AWS. We could do this together, kind of thing.
Mm.
No.
I was at Experian for so many years, and I was very individualistic at first, and I didn't get that many promotions, and I kept wondering, why am I not getting that many pay raises, not that many promotions? And then one day I got an annual performance review, and it's like, whoa, where did this come from? But the byline on it said I learned how to build relationships with others, and that was
Mm.
I got more done by not doing as much work. In other words, I did a lot of work when it was me, but it wasn't recognized, and I was always a roadblock. And then when they did their 360 reviews, people were like, "Oh, I was waiting on Sean," and that looked bad on me. But then,
Mm.
there was a year or two in there where I almost did nothing, but I got everything done because we all did it together, and those were my best pay raises, my best promotions. It's really not about your individual contribution once you get into
Mm.
like higher levels. It's about your ability to enable and bring others together. Like it's your ability to bring others together. Then when you're in that leadership role, it's about your ability to enable others. But when you're
Mm.
not in that leadership, it's your ability to influence others.
Yeah.
I have seen this happening to one of my lead developers. Like uh, uh, he'll give us, how should I say this? Like he'll pull us towards this idea. Like it's like you may not like it, but you're like, hey, it's probably a good thing. It's probably doing a good thing, so we are going to try it out. And turns out it's a good thing. And it's I do agree with you that when you become a we have a lead developer over here, and he is very good at what he does.
Mm.
And like him, as you said, like he can pull people towards what he's doing. He can complete his vision, and he takes the help of others. I mean, it's not like taking the help of others. He asks others, and we are like, oh, okay, we see the same vision as you. Complete
Mm.
this.
I think your key technical skill is going to be systems design. And the reason why is even before it was called systems design back in 1998 and all those earlier years, we still ask the same questions. How do I write a rate limiter? How do I get past this database that is so slow? Oh, add caching. Well, how do I add caching?
Mm.
All that kind of stuff. The one thing, I mean, I know interviews focus on systems design as just the ability to do anything. But in practice, the key benefit is it allows you to have in your head a mental picture of what it is you're trying to achieve. And as long as you know what you're trying to achieve, it's a lot like the front end. If someone gives you a mock up of what a screen looks like, then it doesn't matter if you're junior or senior, you're going to imitate it until it's built. And then eventually you have it in reality, you have a realization of it. On the back end or the system as a whole, you have to see how the pieces fit together, how the data flows, and all that. And your key skill to being one of the best, like this tech lead that you reference that's at your company, I'm pretty sure that his or her superpower is that somehow they have a handle on the design of the system, hence system design. And so because they know what needs to be built, they feel a lot more productive. I was on a panel with other leaders once, and we were asked the question, why is it as a leader do you feel that you can uh, be more productive than your team when you give it to your team? Do you ever feel like it takes you days and it takes them weeks? And we all had the same, of course it does. But it's not because we're leading the team that makes us more efficient. And we're not more efficient because we're leaders of the team. We're not leaders of the team because we're more efficient. We're more efficient because we spent 5 weeks working out the requirements, and then we already know what needs to be built. And by the time the team gets it, they have 1 day to come up to speed, and it's going to take them 2 weeks. It's going to take them some time, right?
Mm.
And I think that's where systems design as a general subject gives you an advantage. If you're able to visualize how things will fit together and work, or what questions to ask, then your productivity is going to be through the roof. And everyone's going to look at you and say, how does this person know that? Well, I mean, of course you don't know that, but somehow in your head you can see how it all fits together. And that's what the secret ingredient is.
Mm.
Yes, yes, I've seen that happening too. Even when I was previously in the backend team, I mean, it was not a backend team. We only had 3 people in there, but right now it's called the backend team for us. We were working out the backend part of it, the backend architecture. Like we use GCP for our backend architecture, and we are like, okay, we have to do APIs. That's the main goal. Somehow we have to do an API, but a lot of thinking and sprints went into research, went into the security part of it. How is a user going to connect to the backend part of it? We researched for I think a few weeks about this. It took us like a month of research, since we are all like we were all, I think we had a developer with 5 years of experience, 3 to 5 years of experience. We didn't have a tech lead kind of person at our company, so just 3 or 4 of our developers or CTO, we had to think about it. I learned a lot about how every the backend was connected. Okay, we have to connect this Firebase, and we have to use this API gateway to actually send all these requests. And this is the
Mm.
security. This is the capture that goes on. And we had like a whole diagram of everything that's connected, and me helping them how actually teach me that okay, this is how the backend is working. Now I know how the flow goes through all this,
Mm.
and that kind of helps you. Like even when I was looking at other system design, while I was doing this, I was looking at other system designs, like design Netflix, like those interview questions that they ask. Design Netflix, design this. I was looking at their things, and they're like, they look almost the same as we did.
Mm.
And just by knowing this information, because most companies, like you can't see all these designs in most of the companies. They're done by like an architect, like a software architect that's like way high above you. I got to say that I got to participate in this, and it helped me out a lot, just by looking at like, okay, how is the data going to flow from one end to the other end.
Mm.
Even like uh, I agree with Sean about having a mental flow of how things go. Whenever I'm working with some, like I was working with Stripe, and it's like there are so many API calls going front and back with Stripe. And they had like a small diagram of like, okay, this is how the API call is going to go. But inside, I had a lot of code, like a lot of functions going on. And as he said, I had a good knowledge of, okay, this is the flow. Now I have to explain it to all the other developers after the sprint end. And even it was confusing for me and for them of how the flow was going to go. My lead developer had a lot of questions on that. It's like, okay, what is happening here, what is happening over here? It's like I can't explain all of it, all these details, because I would say if you're working on something new, having an actual diagram and
Mm.
showing it to the people. Like I had this while I was like talking to them in the sprint. At the end of the sprint, I had to talk to like show them all my code of how Stripe was working. Having a good diagram is good. It's
Keep,
easier. It's the key
yeah,
thing.
I would recommend, if I can interject,
Yes.
keep practicing. I Right now for me, it's second nature. Just a thought appears in my head, and I could visualize an entire system like instantly and be very close to accurate. Maybe some differences in reality, but it's not an innate. It's one that you have to build. If I could make a suggestion, every time you're about to do something that's design related, particularly as it pertains to data flow or like the back end, if for a year or so, if you can force yourself to get the discipline to put it on paper first and then implement off of paper, after about a year, you won't need to do it It'll just be second nature. It'll be a skill that you've cultivated. And maybe if you have an architect, this is how I learned software architecture at Experian. I had other people to brainstorm with. It was never, something I just did in a vacuum. But or I would look at design pattern books. Surprisingly, I cataloged over 989 design patterns, and then I went and diagrammed by hand each one of them out. And they're for different domains. Some of them for coding, some of them for workflow, some of them for communication, some of them for database, and so on. But my point behind all this is if you can get yourself to diagram it out in some way on paper before you build it, then you will develop the skill of being able to visualize anything. Like you'll find at some point it's a worthless exercise to diagram it because you just know what's going to happen and you feel like it's wasting time to diagram it. That's when you know you don't need to write it on diagrams anymore. But until then, you're going to feel like, man, how do I get this on paper? I'd rather just build it. I would recommend every day, 15 minutes, whatever. If you could whiteboard or diagram it or use Visio or something like that, you will build that skill and you'll be amazed at it'll just become a superpower. Me and a few other people did that, and like it works. It's not a cliche. I mean, it really works.
So yeah, you made an interesting point earlier. Like at a certain point, technical prowess, develop your technical skills. That stops, really enabling you to make progress in the organization. At another point, it's more beneficial to focus on, like you say, like painting the vision, being able to communicate that vision via like system design to everybody and start empowering them.
I've seen that. Like even my lead developer, now that you say it out loud, now that Sean has actually said it out loud, like I'm looking back through what my lead developer has done, and it's like he had a vision. Like I think we changed from Webpack to White. It was not easy, but I was like, how did he suddenly make this change? Like I think he had a vision of like, okay, we want to change to White, and White is quick. I'm telling you, White is way better. 0.1 seconds, your app will start. And it's good at caching all this. So now that I look back at it, it's like he probably had a vision of this app working with White. And he already had the flow and everything. Now he just needs to code it out for it to work.
So I was talking with I was mentoring one of my junior devs recently, and he asked the question, I don't think I'm that productive. I know I can get a lot of things done really fast. But I also know the people I hire are better at what they do than I am at the same time. So like all of us together, we form a team. But there is a reason why sometimes when I finally put stuff out, it delivers really smoothly. And it's a trick that I learned as a software architect at Experian that I hadn't done before that, is sometimes I can get a sense for, in 5 months, this is going to be a problem. Or they'll talk about something now, but it's not materialized into a project, but I know it's coming. Or it's just something I want to do. It doesn't matter the reason. But I will create a small prototype. Behind the scenes, no one knows I'm doing it. And it's just something I do for my own benefit, a prototype. So I've done it once, and I did that with the Svelte. I spent a month on my Svelte rewrite before I went and hired somebody to do it with me. And what this prototype does is it allows me to get ahead of the problems and answer some questions and do it with the safety of zero deadlines. If they don't know I'm doing it, they're not asking for it, pretty much. But having done it once before I'm on the hook for it, I've worked out a lot of kinks. And 100% of the time, the project goes smoother when I've had a chance to prototype it, and it goes a lot more bumpy when I have not had a chance to prototype it. So if you're able to think of something that you want to do that is like, man, how do I do it? I don't understand. get ahead of the curve and see if you can spend a little time each day to build up a prototype and work out the kinks and answer your questions before they put it on your plate. And I think what you're going to find is they're going to see it like, wow, that guy knows what he's doing. How does he know these answers? But deep down inside, you know you don't have the answers. You just had a prototype before they did. That is actually what I do. And I coach my junior people to do the same thing. Sometimes I work with them on it and I specifically support it. But in my career, I've had to do it either in isolation from my boss or with some team members in isolation from my boss. Because once your boss knows you're doing it, it's going to become a project.
That's nice. Like I think all of like even at my company we do like proof of concept, like basically prototypes for our own thing before we start working on anything new. Like I had to build a prototype for Stripe before I actually went into it, but it's better to do it before they ask me.
Yeah.
At least so that hey, I have the confidence to be like if somebody asks me, I'm like, yeah, already have this working, I know this the flow.
Bingo.
It's a small trick that we can do.
Sounds like you work at a good company. You're saying all these things. Like, I'm like, man, I feel like I'm an enlightened CTO because I do these things, or I think these are the way a company should be run. But your answer to everything is that's what we do here. And it's like, there's some things I want to say that I can't because I'm on camera. I don't know if my boss is watching this, but it sounds like you're working at a really good place.
Yes, I love my work. That's all I have to say. And like the thing about I like about it is that when like I was building Stripe, I was building the proof of concept for Stripe, and it took me a long time. Like it took me almost like 5 or 6 days, or probably more if I consider it. And no one was trying to micromanage what I was doing. Like my CTO was like, I was letting them know every stand up. I was like, hey, I built this, I built it. They were not pushing me towards some answer. And because of that, I think I've done it better. Like when I actually integrated that into a React app, like I just built that in isolation. I copied the code into the React app. Everything went smoothly. It took me a day, a single day, a few hours. I sat down, I put the whole Stripe code in there, and everything works smooth. And I'm like, them giving me that time was very helpful, so that I'll give back my time to you when I actually like give you the product.
Yeah, company culture is very important. Like who doesn't want a company where the employees love to come to work and work hard? So what are some bad company culture like concept that you've come across that kind of demotivated y'all from like really being productive, like micromanagement?
It's funny. You said a company loves when people work hard. I want to jump on that cliche because I think one of the toxic things about American, maybe it's global, but my view is American corporate culture is the definition of hard work means the more you sacrifice of yourself and your life and give to the company, that's hard work. Longer hours, longer weekends, like less vacation, get rewarded. That's hard work. But companies don't want hard workers in reality. You want smart workers, people that are going to make the company efficient, competitive, and the employees happy. So, like, where I'm at, the culture is really balanced. And honestly, I find I'm going to go anywhere else kicking and screaming because it's not a normal experience.
It's honestly like I think people leave because of the culture, and
Yeah.
managers are a big part of that culture because sometimes they don't enforce it or they enforce it too much.
Or
And
selectively.
yes, selectively too. And for me, like I don't know, I'm happy with my company. I love to work. If you guys want insurance, you can go to that company. It's called Loop Insurance. It's based in Austin, but only for Texas residents. So
Yeah, y'all check that out, Loop.
I built an insurance software platform before. And they were also based mostly out of Texas, but they had an office here where the developers were. I wonder if it's related.
Insurance is hard to get into, honestly, for us at least. Like,
Yeah.
just I previously worked in medical. I can't say medical because so I worked in Blue Cross Blue Shield,
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
and it I worked on a agent's website, the agents that work for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
mhm.
But currently, like I'm on car insurance, so but car insurance is not easy. And at my company, I like the vision that the company has too. That's one of the reasons I reached out to them. Uh, so if we don't use credit to give you insurance, like we don't
Mm,
check your credit, we just it's depending upon your location and how you drive is how
mm.
we rate you. And it's like that's totally different from what other insurances are doing. Like I have Geico personally, but
Yeah.
and Geico probably checks okay, this guy's working as a software developer, this guy's doing this guy's doing that, like it checks puts all of this into check. But our company doesn't do that, so it's like splitting away from actually
Mm,
what the industry is doing. And it's the CEO is nice, the company is doing good, so I love their vision of where they're going right currently.
that's awesome.
Yeah, we're approaching an hour and 20 minutes. I think it's about a good time to start. Additional thoughts?
uh, to about what, like,
Just anything before we close?
if anybody wants insurance, you can come to ridewithloop.com. You guys can go there, get your insurance. It's good. I love, honestly, I love everybody at the company. That's what I have to say. Everybody is good. Like, that's what matters a lot. For me, that's what matters a lot. Your culture at the company should be open, at least to me. It should be open. Everybody should be able to reach out. And the one more thing is the CEO talked about this, and when you hire a lot more people, your culture may get diluted.
Hmm.
Like slowly, one manager may not be like pushing the culture towards the team. But for us, at least, like even though I think we are at 50 right now, the culture is still there. Everybody
Hmm.
has the same culture. The people that we are hiring come into with the same mindset of everybody else.
What about you, Sean? Any closing thoughts?
No.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on, Raja, man. If you ever want to come on again, let us know, man, and we'll bring you on.
Definitely, definitely. You guys can invite me next time. I actually love talking to you guys. I've learned something new. I'm gonna write
Oh,
down
yeah.
that diagram. I think there's the writing down on paper. I think drawing the diagrams on paper. That's what I'm gonna do.
Feel free to ping me also if you need somebody to hash it out with or anything like that. I'll totally like
Yeah,
um,
I wanted to
I'll
ask you
totally
this.
make time for it.
I wanted to ask you this. Like, is like drawing these diagrams is only for the back end? Like, how should I think of it from a front end perspective? Like, let's just say they tell me to put a button somewhere in the app, somewhere in the website. Like, how should I think of it as the diagram? Like, is it like the state management, how the state flows from here to there, or like the UI? Like,
Yeah, I wish I could show you ours. I can't, unfortunately, but the way I do it is I use. Are you familiar with a low fidelity design
yes,
where it's
we
just
have.
like okay? So I do a lot with low fidelity designs, and even if they're pencil sketches, and the way I do it is I'll identify where the components are, what should be a component or what is if it's already been made, and then I capture what the state is and the state interactions. So that way I do sometimes a form of optimization through that. I just did that exercise with somebody yesterday on my team where they did it one way and then we sat down to put it on paper and we eliminated 300 lines of code off of it just by saying, oh, if that went there, we don't have to do all this. So that's how I do it. I'll get the data interactions off of the screen through a low fidelity design.
No.
But it's context. Those are the problems I'm trying to solve. They may not be the problems you're trying to solve.
Yes, I'll use the same like pattern in my own designs. Yes.
Someday, I could probably craft a couple up and send them your way so you can see an example of what I'm talking about.
I'll probably reach out to you about that.
Yeah. And we use GraphQL also, so like I get the mappings, all that kind of stuff.
And I had to, so my lead developer, he showed me how to write a mutation and how to write all this, and it was not easy for me. Like he showed me on one of the APIs, like I had to do for the other API myself. It was not easy, but since the setup was good, like he's like all the setup of the where the mutations were, where the resolvers were, it was easy for me to like just go through them, add all of them.
We use something called type GraphQL since we're a TypeScript shop here. And there's almost 0 lines of code. Mutations, subscriptions, all that. There's almost 0 lines of code with our GraphQL schemas and our resolvers and all that kind of stuff. It's so interesting how everybody does it differently. It's like a McDonald's. It's like a hamburger. Every single place you go, it's a bun. It's ketchup. It's mustard, and it's a patty, and it's different everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.
All right, good.